Yes, pleasure to see you all. Welcome, Shammai. Um, Sorry about last week. You can always the link pretty much is always the same, unless there's some unusual event.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, so we're in Siman Tzadi Bet, Sif Daled in the tour, and maybe Isaac, you want to read the tour?
Yeah. ופסח הרב אפרים, הרבנו אפרים, דלה אמרינן אפשר לשוחטו אסור אלא בבשר בחלב, אבל בשאר איסורים כגון כזית חלב שנבלע בחתיכה, ואין בה שישים לבטלו ונאסרה, ואחר כך בשלה עם האחרות, אין צריך אלא שישים כדי כזית הראשון, ואז אפילו החתיכה עצמה חוזרת להיות מותרת. ורבנו תם פסק אם בשאר איסורים אפשר לשוחטו, אסור, ודווקא שנאסר בנותן טעם, שלא היה בהיתר 60 לבטל האיסור שנבלע בו, אבל נאסר במשהו, אפילו נאסר מחמת מינו, שעושה במשהו לרבי יהודה, לא נעשית כולה נבלה, ואדוני אבי הראש, ז"ל הסכים לדעת הרבנו אפרים. Okay,
Okay, so
so
explain.
Rabbeinu Ephraim held that we think that anything that's not basar b'chalav, if you can like get rid of the stuff that's balua in it, it goes back to being mutar. But in basar b'chalav, it's still aser.
And
Um,
therefore, you need 60 against the whole thing. So, by
right.
the way, here you see that he's using the term efshar lesochto in a way that we would use the term chanan.
Hmm.
He's using it, he's exchanging that term. It's the same thing for him. Here you see that clearly because he's not just talking about that the piece, not only is the piece mutter, but he also says you need 60, right? He says, Ein tzarich ein tzarich el shishim keneged
Kedei kazayat
de
harishon.
kazayit harishon, as
Yeah.
opposed to with basar b'chalav that you need a shishim against the whole mixture. So you see that's what we call chanan. So
Yep.
he's the terms for him are interchangeable. That's all Rabbeinu Ephraim. What is
Then we
the other
have
opinion?
Rabbeinu Tam.
And wait, even the piece becomes
Oh, sorry.
mutter, and we'll see. The Shulchan Aruch also quotes that, and that's not going to really be at least the simple understanding of it. We can see what the Shach says about it, but the simple understanding of that. In fact, if we don't get to the Shach, make a note of it for yourself that there's a Shach here that explains what it gives a teretz for this. But but the simply put, it's really wrong the way because the way the piece doesn't become muteret. Once the piece is usher, maybe theoretically it could become muteret, but the piece once it's usher is really going to remain usher because we're never going to be well. The Rashba says because we're never going to be sure that all the isser got out of it. But here he seems to say that it would even become mutter in shar isurim, not in basar b'chala, but in shar isurim. So
Yeah.
what does Rabbeinu Tam say?
He does not hold this way, and he thinks that Efshar Sohato and Sha'ari Surim are Aser. So if a piece becomes Aser from absorbing Iser, if that piece didn't have 60 versus whatever was absorbed, um, then it's going to continue to be, then it will be Aser. And that's not going to change even if you cook it with lots more food.
Well,
Um,
wait. No, everybody agrees that if it's not 60, the piece will become usher. That's not a differential. What is the
Right,
main
but
difference?
like, but Rabbeinu, what I'm saying is Rabbeinu Ephraim would say that if that piece is then cooked with lots more pieces, right, and there's 60 versus that kazayit that was absorbed, now
Yeah.
the piece is mutar, as the piece that got asered is now also mutar.
And but that's not the main point. Not only is the Pete Mutar, but there's another point. There's a second point. What's the second point?
That you only need it against the kazayit that was absorbed.
Yeah, exactly. You only need it against the Kazite that was absorbed. But he makes a specification. What is this thing about min domino?
Um, do, do, do. So according, he says that if it's min bimino or anything else that's Aser b'mashehu, then according to
What
Rabbi
else? What's
Yehuda,
another example of something that's for mashu?
um, it's tibalim more or less. Um,
Maybe chametz for Pesach. I don't know if that would be a count, but maybe chametz for Pesach. Yeah. Okay. So something that's aser b'mashu. What about
um,
it?
so he says that according to Rabbi Yehuda, the entire piece is not turned into nevela, um, which is kind of bizarre.
It's based on a Gemara. It's based on a Gemara. But basically, what he's
Right.
saying is like this: if the piece is really aser because of Tom, then we hold Hanan. But if it's usher in a marginal way, it's only usher because it has a mashu in it, then we don't say Hanan. That's what you have to think about. We don't say Hanan, and as he has one place where he doesn't say Hanan, where the thing is usher only because of mashu. That's like such a weak level of becoming usher that we're not going to say Hanan there. But he would say that in Shari Surim in general, we say Hanan, but we don't say Hanan when there's just a masha that made it usher. And the only case he could come up with was according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds mashu and min b'mino. But there might be other cases theoretically. Okay, and what does the Rosh say?
The Rosh agrees with Rabbeinu Ephraim,
Which is what to be
which is
lenient.
that if you then cook this piece that's absorbed Isur in enough other pieces that there's 60 versus the kazayit that was absorbed, then it goes back to being the tar.
Well, again, the mutar part, drop that part. That even though he says that's not. It's not necessarily clear that that's what Rabbi Ephraim says. Even the
Okay.
main point is that you don't need 60.
Yeah.
That's the main point.
Well, you
Okay,
don't need 60 versus the piece. You need 60 versus the kazayit.
you need 60 versus the original, but not 60 against the new
Yes.
found piece that became usher, right? The newly usher piece. Okay. Um, Here, Max, maybe you can read. Actually, here I have a job for us. I want you to get out a paper or an electronic paper, and I want to keep track of all the opinions that the Beis Yosef is now going to bring, because he's going to bring many opinions about which side. And you can make two columns. The two columns are Rabbeinu Ephraim, and the other column is Rabbeinu Tom, let's say. Or you can subtitle those Rabbeinu Ephraim, Ein Hanan. There's no Hanan b'Shar Suri. Ein Hanan b'Shar Suri. And Rabbeinu Ephraim and Rabbeinu Tam is Hanan b'Shar Suri. So make those two columns, and we're going to be like a Rav Avadi Yosef. We're going to keep track of all the opinions and count it up, or at least have a ledger. Okay, so who did I ask? Oh, Max. Yeah, Max. So read the Beis Yosef here. Dal. You can skip the Koteret. He just quotes the whole thing we just read.
Yeah.
He's going to quote the Gemara. He's going to quote the
Garcin
Gemara, which I hope we
Garcinan.
all, yeah, where it says "V'perak Gida Nashim."
Right. Yeah.
So
Okay.
we're going to quote the Gemara. I think we've all read this Gemara once or twice. So well, he's going to quote the whole Gemara and the Tosfot, but we'll go through it together quickly. Go ahead.
Okay. בפרק גיל הנשה גרסינן דרש רבא בר חנה חתיכה של נבלה ושל דג טמא אינה אוסרת עד שתיתן טעם ברוטב ובקופה ובחתיכות.
Right. So we're talking
Okay.
about an Isser has to give flavor to all the things in the pot, and then it'll become Isser. Okay,
Okay.
that's fine. So we need 60. Go ahead.
Okay. Oki Rav Amora Ale v'darash kivan shenasan tam b'chaticha chaticha atzma nasas nevela v'oseres kol chatichos kulan mipnei shehem mina. So then Rav.
So right. So we're talking about here. Maybe what chaticha are we talking about, and what happened to the chaticha? Kevan should not tam. What gave flavor to the chaticha? Maybe an Isser. Maybe not chalav necessarily, but maybe an Isser.
Mhm.
Joel, you agree with that? Yeah, so like an Isser. So like some dog tameh got into this piece, and now the piece Well, we'll see. Let's see. Let's see how the Gemara reads. So the piece became Usr, became Nevela, and now it Usrs all the other pieces because they're the same type. Presumably, the thing that came into it was a different type, and that's why it's written like that. In other words, the original thing that went into the first piece was, let's say, dag tameh, and then the chaticha is like treif beef. It became treif. The chaticha became asur because of the dag tameh, and now it can asur all the other pieces because they're minah. So we'll see what exactly isur is. That's a little bit wrong. It can't be like the way I'm saying, but we'll see why. Keep going on. Amar le Rav Safra.
Amar le Rav Safra le'Abaye, Mikdi Rav Kiman Amar Lashmate Kirabi Yehuda. Damar Min B'mino La Batil.
Right. So he's saying that it must be Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because it says it ushers all the other pieces, and there's no qualifier there. It doesn't say it ushers the other pieces in 60. It just says it ushers all the other pieces, no matter how many there are. So there's no qualifier, so it must be Rabbi Yehuda.
Right.
Well,
Okay, my area kinas tam. If you look kilo tam nami. But what does it make a difference if there is any tam? Even if it didn't give any tam, it should still be min b'min lo batel.
yeah, in other words, what we're saying is like, let's stick with the dag tameh. Let's stick with the idea of the dag tameh.
Okay.
What do we care if the dag tameh gave flavor to the original, to the first piece?
Right.
Even if it didn't give flavor, well, then it can't be a dag tameh, right? It must be that it was not a dag tameh, but it was nevela. It was nevela into a kosher piece. So forget about the dag tameh. It must be a nevela into the kosher piece. And now the Gemara is asking if it's since the original nevela is mina, why do I care that the nevela gave tam to the piece? Even if it didn't give tam to the piece, it should usher because the original nevela can usher is capable of ushering all the pieces. So what does the Gemara answer? You understand? Now, there's the original Avela that touched the piece. It has the power to usher everything. So why don't you say it had a two-stage process? Let it say directly.
Mm-hmm. All right. Amar le Abaye hachma eskinan b'shekidem v'silko.
Oh, he removed the piece. He removed the Nevela. So therefore, the other piece is there, the piece that became usher, not the original Nevela. And therefore, it's only us. Now see how Rabbeinu Tam learns? Can you already hear the Rabbeinu Tam that we just read in the tour? What is Rabbeinu Tam going to say about this? What Rabbeinu Tam, he says, it's only if it gave Tam, and then it ussers the other pieces. But if the piece itself was usser from the nevela touching it, but it didn't get Tam of the other nevela, it was only a mashu, then it wouldn't usser the other pieces. So that's what the Gemara means. Kevan shenatan tam, it became like seriously usher, and therefore it can usher the other pieces, even though the original piece has been removed. The original levela has been removed,
As opposed to mashu.
as opposed to the original. Exactly, as opposed to the piece being usher b'mashu from the original levela. Then it wouldn't usher the other pieces. That's the diuk in the Gemara that it says kevan shenatan tam benevela. Kevan shenatan tam b'haticha. All right, go on. So now he's going to explain basically, I think, what I said. Well, let's see. Kasvu Shama
Okay.
Tosfos.
The katz v'shama tosos b'shekidem v'silek es ha'eser v'im tamar lama li shechaticha shel heter kabla tam min hanavela afilu lo nasna tam nami.
Right. In other
Tehab
words, what do we care? It's Asa Ramashahu.
right.
Daha.
Tehab b'mina oseres b'koldu. Right. So we just said that we already know that b'mina
In
it's
Asa in any
aser.
amount. So why does it say Kevin Shanatan Tam?
Right.
Va'omer Rabbeinu Tam. So here's Rabbeinu
Right.
Tam's point.
Right. Didn't he gufa mitzara b'choldehu mikol makom lo amrinan sheta'asen avel asor kol ha'acheros kivan shehi atzma lo ne'asra ela al yedei kol shehu.
In other words, that's exactly what the Torah said. we don't say, and we kind of like we don't say that it really became the status of Hanan unless it gets actual tam, but not if it's just got mashu. And therefore, this whole right, the whole distinction really is in the world of Rabbi Yehuda. But even if we don't hold Rabbi Yehuda, we're going to still hold this principle. That's yeah, okay. So go on. The Rabbeinu Ephraim.
ורבינו אפרים היה אומר, מתוך כך, דאפילו כי נסנה בטעם, אין ההתר נעשה נבלה, שיצטרך שישים כנגד כל החתיכה, אלא כנגד העשר הבלוע.
Right,
הילקח,
right. In other
לרב,
words, what is he? What's his point? What's his point? So what is he saying?
so his point is that
He's saying like this: even if it would have given flavor, we don't say Hanan. We don't say Hanan because
because it's only the Isser Balua, not the entire Chaticha.
because we see that right. Because if we would say Hanan in Shar Isurim, then even not according to Rabbi Yehuda, this would be a problem. The Gemara said it's only according to Rabbi Yehuda, right? But but I think that's the way he's learning. In other words, if we would say Hanan when it gives full flavor, then why would we be making this ukimta that's going to Rabbi Yehuda? It could be according to all the rabbis, then that all the pieces would become us, because assuming there isn't 60. Joel, what do you think? Joel's learned this 4 times.
No, I also think that it's like a weird thing to say, like the Rabbeinu Tam thing to say that, well, if min b'mino eino batel, but if it becomes asur because of min b'mino, it doesn't have the power to osir everything else because it was that little, is a weird read of the Gemara, right? You think that the min b'mino all the way down, if you're going to hold Rabbi Yehuda, you're going to hold Rabbi Yehuda. It's like,
Right. It's kind of like a limit. We're kind of like putting in. We're saying Rabbi Yehuda is not crazy. In other words, we're saying no. Rabbi Yehuda, don't take it to its full logical conclusion. You're right. Full logical conclusion would say it should go forever. But he says no. Rabbi Yehuda thinks that if you take away the original piece and you just have the secondary piece, it needs to be usher because of time. It's
yeah,
it's we're minimizing the machloket. We're saying that Rabbi Yehuda
exactly.
is not so extreme.
Yeah, and I don't think Rabbeinu Ephraim agrees with that. He thinks that he is extreme, and therefore it must be a very limited case that we're willing to say um, the Hanan essentially. So
Well, but what does he mean? Again, we always have this question: what does it mean b'toch kach? In other words, based on the logic of Rabbeinu Rabbeinu Tam, he's saying b'toch kach afilu ki natna batam ein haheter nase nevela. He's saying if we don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda, and we're in the other world, so we see there's a distinction, basically. You say like this. We see there's a distinction between, in other words, we see that the pieces don't always become usher, essentially. So if we don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda, then afilu ki natna batam eina heter nase nevela shitzarek shishim keneged kol hachaticha ela keneged iser balua. In other words, we see that there's a thing called a piece that's usher. We see there's a concept called a piece that's usher, but the piece is not as usher as the original thing. We see that there's a piece that's usher according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbeinu Tam. There's a piece that's usher, but it's not as usher as the original thing, and therefore it doesn't continue on. Just like you said, we're limiting it. So if there is such a thing as a piece that's usher, so let's apply it in the world of not Rabbi Yehuda. There's a thing that's usher, which is Shar Isurim came into this piece and ushered it. Even if there is Tam now, we'll say it's usher, but it's not the same level as the original thing. It's not Chatichana Se Nevela. It's not become a Nevela.
can I put it a little bit differently? I,
Yeah.
I, I think he's saying like to Rabbi Yehuda, who is similar to what you're saying, but Rabbi Yehuda who holds min b'mino b'mashahu, even he's gonna say it's not mashahu in case of Hanan. So if it's Hanan is like a step down from the normal Isur, then for us who hold Tam, right, then Tam isn't enough to make it Hanan. It's got to be a step up from Tam to make it Hanan.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Which only leaves us the original thing. Which only the only step up from
Nachum,
Tam. Yeah. Go ahead, Rabbi Lance.
No, I'd say, I mean, when we've encountered this before, we've said it's asur, but eno oser.
Right.
Have you used this language tonight?
No.
And why not?
Well, I mean, it could oser. I wouldn't go so far as to say it does not oser. It could
Okay,
oser,
so
but it's just
now
not
now we're
hanan.
saying now we're saying is
It's
so
just it doesn't oser. It doesn't require 60 against it. It requires against the original drop that's in it.
so what would be the terminology? In other words, how do we actually define this? When you say something's asur and they know oser, that I understand. But this other element, I don't
It's
I
it's
don't
it's
fully get.
asur. It's asur, but it's not nase nevela. It's asur of a lo nase nevela. The piece is asur,
And when you
but
say when you say lo nasa nevela, you're referring to the piece itself or the piece next to that piece?
no, the piece that absorbed from the original
Yeah,
isser is
right.
asur, but it's not nase nevela.
A
It
store of
hasn't.
all, so
Or we
eno
could call here
nevela.
the term that we actually are going to see is eno isser atzmi. It's not an usser. It's not an isser atzmi. It's not essentially usser. It's usser
But
because it has
what's the
something in it.
functional? When you say asur beno oser, you show a functional distinction. Is there a functional distinction here?
I
And what is it?
Yeah, by the amount. By the amount. We go,
So,
Jacob.
okay.
yeah, the functional distinction would have to be, we don't have to worry about invalidating the whole piece, just to the extent that of what was absorbed, right?
That's good. I think what do you think about that? That's not bad. But say it better. Just say the same thing again, Jacob. But
Um, for this case, we're not talking about with Hanan, we'd have to invalidate the whole piece. With this, we just have to invalidate what was absorbed.
okay. Okay. Now Josie just said like the degrees of Tuma. Does that actually work? Josie?
I don't know. I pose it as a question. Is
You
it
like
like
no, you like the fact that there's a first degree, second degree? Maybe so. In other words, when we look at it in Gamson, look at it completely, and we say there's different degrees, so we can say that there's it's a sur, but it's only to the degree of the absorption. And this other one is a sur, oser, which sounds like that's the whole thing itself is a sur.
Well, a surba eno oser is usually talking about like klipa, that something, how far something goes. How does it keep traveling? And we say it doesn't, the klipa travels one, the isser goes into the klipa, but the
It's true
klipa doesn't
about
go into the next
Kleba.
klipa.
I thought that was also true about okay. Seder.
In other words,
Then we have to
a
say it
surba
that
eno
way.
oser is talking about how far it travels, how far the isser travels. Here we're talking about
Right.
it. We're admitting that it travels far. We're just limiting the amount of it that how much can travel. Only the original Isser can travel.
Which is more Asur in these two elements? The one that's limited in its absorption, or the one that's limited in the traveling?
I think the one that's limited in traveling is less Asur because it doesn't even get there. Here it gets there. It's just a question of how much gets there. But in
Okay.
Asur, in Oser, doesn't travel there at all.
Okay. And let's get and what would be the terminology for that? You had it before, I think, but I can't remember exactly how you
Asur
said
ve'eno chanan.
Asur ve'lo. Okay, it's Asur, but Avo eno chanan. Okay, that's
Right.
great. And thank you for modeling the bechina that each one of these people will be taking.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, this is all right. So go on, Max. Go on, Max. Hilchaf. He's going to kind of explain. We didn't finish reading it really. So he's now going to explain why he said what he said, really.
Hilkach
Hilchach.
l'Rav. Is that right? Is that
Yeah.
where I left? Okay. Hilkach l'Rav d'amar hachamim b'mino labatel. Kshechatichas heter kiblat ta'amin hanavela chashiv ha'isr ki'ilu hu be'ayin ve'oseres kol hachatichos b'mashehu. Okay, so
With the
for
key word here is tam. When it got,
right.
if you hold mashu, then when you have tam, it ushers everything. Go on. Aval.
Aval kilo nitna hanavela ta'am ba lo haysa oseres hachatichos mipnei shehem mina. Sharei ein sarich levatel ela ha'isr levad.
Keep reading.
Yeah,
The
v'kevan shelo natan tam b'chaticha have ha'isr kiman delese.
It's not here. The lo have ki'ilu hube. It's not here. In other words,
Not there.
the Isser is explaining now what Rabbeinu Tam said. Rabbeinu Tam said that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't usher min b'mino when it's unless there's actual tam of the flavor of the thing in the new piece. Because if there isn't, then it's like the original Isser isn't here and it's not here, so it's not here. It can't usher. It's kind of like traveling actually. But when it gets tam, then it's the Isser is here. And it can asar. Velo asar.
Velo asar ela chaticha rishona.
In other words, that mashahu only forbid the original piece.
Shein haheter nase iser, velo asar shar chatichos.
Because it didn't actually become isser just because it's asar. There is this concept called being asar, but not chanan. It's not chanan. That's the Rabbeinu Tam must be saying.
So,
and now he's going to go. Now he's going to say why he extends it.
There's an Easter on the Gabra to eat it, but the Chetza is not really Asur. Is that what we're saying? Maybe that's good.
Listen, I don't want to say everything is brisk, but
it could be brisket. I don't care. But, I think
exactly.
Okay. I'll stop.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's hefsek.
But I think it helps explain it. You can't eat it, but itself is not the same.
You're right, but it is usher. It's the piece is usher, but you're okay. I see what you're saying. It's usher for me to eat it, but it's not usher in the sense that it ushers other things. So the chefetz, you could say, is not really usher.
That's right.
Okay,
that's exactly.
I hear what you're saying. It has. I like it. Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And now he's going to say, and therefore, I hold the same concept. I hold that there is such a thing as a piece that's aser, but is not chanan. It doesn't become isser. Just like Rabbi Yehuda said, just like Rabbeinu Tam said about Rabbi Yehuda, I'm going to say about every case, even when there is tam. And he says, and don't tell me I'm wrong. V'dochach. Go on.
Wait, I have Vidavka?
Oh, sorry, Vidavka. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Vidavka kabei tibas chalav, amrinan beperik kol basar, de chaticha atzma nasas nevela, v'tzarich shishim keneged kol hachaticha, v'lo sagi v'bitol tipa lechud, mishum de kol chad.
And that's only by basar v'chalav. Why? Mishum.
De kol chad v'chad ba'an pei nafshei share.
Because each one on its own is mutter.
Right. The chi isnu ba'adei aser. Hilkach habasar.
When they join together, they become aser. In other words, there's like a nuclear reaction when they meet, and that changes both of them into becoming isser, and they become isser atzmi.
Right.
But that doesn't happen by shar isurim.
Right.
Hilkach
habasar atzmo naase isser veloke imachal chatzi zayis mibasar chatzi zayis. Nasa isser veloke im achal chetzi zayis mibasar vechetzi zayis michalav ulekach tzarich berotev shishon levatel.
You only get whipped if you eat a full kazayit. Wait a second. You only get whipped if you eat a full kazayit. So here, if you have half a kazayit of each, and you mix them, and it becomes basar b'chalav, both of them are aser equally, and therefore if you eat them together, as a kazayit, then you're going to get whipped because you ate a kazayit and basar b'chalav, and it's not like you ate they're not two different isser. There's one. Each one is equally isser in the same category.
Right.
So it became a new isser.
Right. Don't think that you need a full zayis of
either. But the point
one.
is, he's trying to prove that it's not like the meat is usser because it has milk in it.
Right.
Even the meat is now usser itself. It's intrinsically usser.
Yeah.
V'lakach.
ולקח צריך ברוטב 60 לבטל כל החתיכה שנפלה עליה טיפס חלב. So that's why you need shishim in the rotev against the entire piece onto which the milk fell. Aval chatichas heter shebala'at ta'am nevela v'nesra v'chazra v'nitna ta'am berotev ein tzarich ela shishim levatel ha'isser shenivla b'chaticha. But on the other hand, if you have a kosher piece of meat that is bolei atam, that's a case where you're only going to need shishim on the drop and not on the entire piece.
Right. Because it's only usher because it has in it a drop.
Right. Not because of atzmi.
Right. Ve'ein sarich.
Ve'ein sarich shir shishim shel osa chaticha ad kan l'shono.
So that's the Tosfos. I think it's a little bit summarized, but that's the Tosfos, more or less, of these two opinions of Rabbeinu Ephraim and Rabbeinu Tam. Okay. Even though, there was Rabbeinu Ephraim is basically taking the concept of Rabbeinu Tam and really elaborating on it and saying logically we should have that same rule even not in the world of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, go on now in the Beis Yosef.
Okay. Ve'erichu harbe b'davar. Tosfos goes on. Uvesof divreihem kasvu kasav Rabbeinu Yehuda dinir'eh le Rabbi Yehuda Lari lahachmi b'davar kivan de'ein raya brura b'davar.
It says we have these machloket. So all right, here we got our first one. Ri is like who? Rabbeinu Tam. That's my first one to put down.
But as like a chumrah, because he can't decide which side, like there's no proof either way, essentially.
Yeah, okay. You're saying out of suffix. You're saying, but in the end, he's paskening. Okay, but I'm just at this point. I mean, you're right. Everyone has their reasons. That's his reason.
With an asterisk.
Fine, exactly. He doesn't know. He doesn't think somebody's right. He just thinks right. It's not clear. So be machmir. All right, go on.
All right. V'kein kasav smag de'ein lasos.
Okay, wait. Smag. Let's write down smag. Okay.
De'ein lasos ma'aseh lahakel kedivrei harav Rabbeinu Ephraim ki kol rabosenu hakadmonim chokim alav. So
this is an important phrase. The Beis Yosef is going to quote this phrase. I mean, the Darkei Moshe is going to quote this phrase again. This term. In other words, he's actually stronger, the smag, because he's quoting some Rabbanim that existed that we don't know who they are, but there must have been many Rabbanim who held like Rabbeinu Tam. Right? Kol Rabotenu Hakadmonim Cholkim Alav. Saying that's a phrase that we'll see again in the Darkei Moshe. Okay. V'smak, what about smak?
V'smak kasav de'ein hashita mochacha kedivrei harav Rabbeinu Ephraim.
Oh, so he's even stronger. We're actually building up here. I think the first one was suffix. The second one was the precedent. We have a precedent, and the third one is saying he's actually agreeing that Rabbeinu Ephraim is gone too far. So who's this? Is a smak. Okay, continue.
Mordechai kasav denireli lachriya velomar devechol shar yisurin ne'amar chaticha atma na'asas nevela. Mihu hainu davka bechaticha atma mitam chashivus hachaticha.
Okay, so Rabbeinu Tam is good. So Mordechai, so the Mordechai is going to be nuanced. We can put him also in the same camp, but he's going to be more nuanced. He's going to say only in certain circumstances. Davka, when it's a chaticha. So for a piece, for an actual piece, and not for what? Not for some kind of soup, let's say, mixture.
Mhm.
We go on. Davke b'chaticha atzma mitam chashivut ha'aticha. Because a chaticha is so important. Okay, go on.
Right.
The Isser Nikar,
The Isser
and the Isser
Nikar,
is Nikar. Umuvdalhu v'nase umuvdalhu nase nevela. That's why it becomes a nevela, because it's like you can point to it. It's a pointable thing.
yeah.
Go ahead.
V'ne'asar levada, v'ne'asar levada, period.
Ki eich
Or coming. Eich
ki eich
yitztar.
yitztaref shum heter.
Right. Do you
Go
have a
on.
key there? Al Hatorah, I
I have
think, is the.
in square brackets instead of af. It should really read ki eich.
Oh, this just has eich. Okay. Ki eich. That makes more sense. Ki eich yitztaref shum heter alei alevatele iser habalua ba.
In other words, nothing else can join it because it's an island. It's an island unto its own.
Yeah.
It's this piece. Nothing else can really join to it.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. He's going to contrast that with
Right.
other cases.
Right. ולפיכך אוסרס כולו, וצריך כדי לבטל כל חתיכה אם אינה ראויה להתכבד, או דבר שבמניין. So
So therefore
so
you
it sort of
need
goes into
therefore
that category of the early 100s of being anal batel.
in other words, if it's not batal, then the whole question doesn't start. Well, actually, wait a
Right.
second. Wait a second. V'tzarich kedei levatel kol chaticha im eino ruya litchabed o davar sheminyan. Wait a second, Joel. You should be jumping out of your seat here. What's? There's something bothering you. I know.
Yeah, no, but I think I mean because he said it was because it was the chashivut of the chaticha. The chashivut of the chaticha will always make it realit kabed, I think. But
Right.
but I think right.
No. That's not what is bothering. What should be bothering you? Tell me what should be bothering you.
Oh, I have to but well, I think if you remove the piece, then you don't end up with that problem at all anyway. And also it's also only min b'mino. So for
No.
chaticha.
I'm thinking of a simpler thing. We have a rule. We learned haticha rui litchabed. When does haticha rui litchabed apply? When it's an iser atzmo.
Yeah, not when it's Yitzhar Balua. So
Not when it's iser
yeah.
balua. Is he? So he's actually saying here that this is not called it. This is called an iser atzmo. It's not called an iser balua. But I might have thought it's iser balua. And I think most of the poskim are going to say like that it is iser balua,
I
even
think
though we say chanan.
there is no Isser Balua in that case, right? Like what
Exactly. If this is not iser balua, then what is iser balua? In other words, so here he's just to remind everybody, we all learned the dinim of haticha ruya litchabed. And the Mordechai here is saying that the din of haticha ruya litchabed could apply to this piece if it's a big piece. And therefore you can never mevatel it. But we learned one of the provisos of haticha ruya litchabed is that it's only if it's atzmo, like an actual piece of nevela or basar b'chalav. We said is but nobody ever said that iser balua in a piece of kosher meat is called because the balua in it is not the balua in it is not really chabed, only the pieces, but the pieces actually heter. It's just got in it iser. So here he's going all the way. He's gung ho. He's going all the way, and he's saying, no, this piece is an iser atzmo aser, and therefore it's really chabed. It won't be batel. Just pointing that out. I just noticed that now. Right, Joel? I think I said because I said this to you because I think you taught. Who here taught it? Did you teach?
I taught it. Yeah, I think I taught Chaticha.
You taught it this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody will. Okay. So just bear that in mind. This is very interesting. That the Mordechai holds that it is a chaticha, that it could be a chaticha rui l'tchabed. All right, go on.
Okay.
Aval davar lach.
B'davar lach, not a chaticha. Kagon truma b'chulin v'yayin b'mayim, b'mayim devar zara, v'kagon rotev b'rotev, de'ein ha'isr nicker, v'nivdal, ve'ein kan chashivus isr misa. מסרב ההתר השני עם הראשון, ולא שייך כלל למימר חתיכה עצמה נסס נבלה.
לא
That,
שייך כלל למימר חתיכה עצמה נעשה נבלה.
yeah.
So wait, so here he's saying, mamish, it's only by the piece and not by lach balach. And we're going to see this halacha, this opinion is going to be in the Shulchan Aruch. I don't know if we'll get to see the Shulchan Aruch, but it's going to be in the Shulchan Aruch, but not as a, what you say in Hebrew, golef, not a categorical opinion, but just in a hefsed merubah or something, we're going to be lenient.
In
Joel?
the Ramah, right? Not
In the Ramah, right. Well, the Ramah only could be in the Ramah because, right.
Yeah.
Because only the Ramah holds the idea of Hanan in Shar Sur. But the point is, lach balach, this is an important thing to remember, lach balach is mefukpak. Lach balach of Shar Surim is a kind of questionable thing because of this Mordechai. Mordechai says, no, we don't say Hanan at all. He says, 100% we don't say Hanan in lach balach. And he makes a very good reason why, because it all mixes together, it remixes. In other words, if it just some soup got some pork in it, and I mix it with more soup, then that pork will spread everywhere. Only by a chaticha do we say Hanan. But that opinion is going to be limited, like I said, only to Hefsed Meruba. Okay, so that's the Mordechai, who's sort of very strict. He says it's 100% chaticha atzma when it's a chaticha, and it's nothing if it's not a chaticha. Okay, where were we?
Alpiza.
Yeah, Val Pizeh.
Val Pizeh.
Adkan.
Oh, that's still the Mordechai. Okay.
It's still the Mordechai. So in other words, he's saying, and I even permitted it Lamaisa. All right, go on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, V'svara zo Kisavua Rashba b'Toras Habayis v'Haran b'Sof Perek Kol Basar b'Shem Aravid v'Zelo Shono Delo Amru Chaticha Atzma Nasis Nevela Ela be'Isser Habalua b'Chaticha Dikevan shenasan Ta'am v'Ein Mamish Isser Zeh Yotze u'Misarev b'Chatichos ha'achiros Ela b'Zo Harehu Kinevela Atzmo.
So wait a second. So wait, this. I would add to our column now. The Ran sounds like the Ran is agreeing also. And who else?
Rashba and Ravid.
Yeah, but I don't think the Rashba is going to say that. We're going to have to erase the Rashba. You could write him, but we're going to have to erase him.
Okay.
And the Ravid. They just wrote this opinion.
I see.
They wrote it. I'm not sure if they actually agreed to it because the Rashba, I don't think he's going to say that. They wrote it. Okay. Avabalach gon yayin b'yayin obamayim v'kiyotze behen afal pi sharishon ne'esar machmat miuto kevan shenafal sham heter v'nitrabe batela isser shaharei nitareva isser legamrei. It all mixes together. Beheter shenafal sham ulebesof commotion shenitarev b'rishon. And then it comes out in the end that it's like it mixed with the beginning. In other words, there's no difference whether it mixed in 2 stages or in 1 stage, because it all mixes together. It's as if once the second pot of soup mixes with it, it's all as though it mixed all of them at once. It's all mixed fully. V'nimsa, go ahead.
V'nimsa she'ein ha'isr me'urav achshav beheter harishon. So in that case, with the lach,
it's not any more with the first than it is
right.
than it is with anything else.
Yeah. Right.
I have bilvad in parentheses here. Achshav beheter harishon bilvad. It's not just in the first one; it's everywhere. Masha'en came b'chaticha.
Right. Shenivala me'iser, because that's really blios.
No, because then it's really separate. It's really become a separate entity. V'ken hadin yavish b'yavish, and so too yavish b'yavish. Go ahead.
Okay. Kagon hameduma v'chein be'mechumatz.
In other words, he's talking about grain. He's talking about grain. Little bits of grain is like a liquid also because it all mixes together. Or flour. Umishum hachi.
I think Rav Nachum in the Mechumat case, it's like when it does something to help, like it's like yeast in bread at that point, right? Where it actually helps create the bread, then the whole thing becomes chanan. Let's say you had some Easter yeast that went into it.
No, but he's giving a list of things that are like lach balach, not things that are like chaticha.
No, this is v'chein adin yavesh be'avesh. Oh, you're right. It is yavesh enke. No. I think v'chein adin here is yavesh be'avesh is when it's asur, right? Chanan.
Masha'ike b'chaticha shenivla be'isur v'kein hadin yavesh b'yavesh mishum hachi ein chozrim v'osrim el fi cheshbon. No,
You're
they
right. You're
don't
right.
go.
Never mind. Yeah, you're right.
No, he's continuing the list.
Yeah.
All right. They'd only go according to the fi cheshbon. Ad kan. Kasfu. Go ahead.
So this is still the Ran, or the Rush by the Ran.
I'm not sure exactly. I'm not sure. I think this is the Beis Yosef talking. He's describing them. He's saying, but kasvu, they wrote.
Right. Okay. About. All right. V'kazvu sheyesh omrim behefech she'ein omrim chaticha atzma nasis nevela ela kishenafal lach belach shenivlal hakol v'naaseh guf echad.
Oh, you could say this far the other way. Dafka, when it's liquid, then we say chanan because it really mixed together.
Right.
Inami
lach biavesh kagon chatichas nevela shenasna tam bechaticha shechuta v'kagon chalav shenivla bebasar.
Aval
yavesh biyavesh kagon hameduma v'mechumatz שזה בפני עצמו עומד וזה בפני עצמו עומד. לא. But low meaning we don't say chanan.
Right. In other words, we do say chanan by liquids, but not by flours or by grains or something that are separate. Okay, fine. Oh, and now he goes. The He'elu. Now, see, remember I said we're going to write it, we're going to erase it? So here, read on. The He'elu.
Ve'elu, dezeh v'zeh inam dvarim mechuvarin.
In other words, neither of these opinions are correct. So in other words, they just reject everything. They reject any distinction. So now we're going to say the Ran, the Rashba, and the Ravid are all going to say, no, they don't agree with the Mordechai at all.
V'kasav Aran, shenira li dechaticha atzma nasas nevela bebasar b'chalav mideoraisa, lefi shebeshas hata'aroves hu shemischadesh ha'isr v'naaseh kol echad atzmo shel isr. So the Ran says that chanan is mideoraisa when it comes to basar b'chalav, because when those two things mixed, something new was created.
Right. So now we have, the Ran, so what's the Ran's opinion? We actually read this last time. What is the Ran's opinion? Where do we put him? He is in the category of Rabbeinu Tam, but it's D'Rabbanan. He holds D'Rabbanan. In other words, it's B'Divreihem. You have to read another line.
Okay.
Ubashar Isurim Eino El Midivreihem. So we read this last time. So you can put the Ran in the same line, but it's D'Rabbanan.
Right.
Okay. We should equate them to basar b'chalav given the lo echmiru ela mishum l'ta de basar b'chalav, because it's similar to basar b'chalav. The ein omrim chaticha atzma naaseh nevela ela b'devarim hamit bashli. It also has to be cooked together. It's not enough that it's mixed. Just dumya de basar b'chalav, just like basar b'chalav has to be cooked. Derech bishul asratar, because it says you have to cook it. Inami tzonen letocham, or it could be one of them is hot. Who would tzonen or dafka tzonen letocham? The cham is on the bottom. The af sha'af hu derech bishul, because that's a kind of bishul. Umishum hachi midume mechumat she'enu derech bishul lo amrinan be'chaticha atzman nevela. And that's why by flour we don't say chanan. So the Ran agrees that by flour we don't say chanan, but for a different reason, but because it's not hot. Avala Rashba. Okay, now we're going the other direction. Aval Rashba katav shenira lo, or shenira li, karansha devarim elu, masha katav Rabbeinu Ephraim. So here we have our first person to put on the other column, the Rashba. The Rashba is like a Rabbeinu Ephraim. Shelo amru efshar lesochto aser ela b'basar b'chalav bilvad. We only say by basar b'chalav. Uminatam shamru shakol chazar keguf echad shel iser, because everything became like a new iser at the atomic, at the nuclear reaction. Aval lo b'shar isurim, but not in other isurim. Because why would you forbid the whole thing? It's obviously just not because it absorbs something. And what comes out of it when you cook it in the second pot is not just isser that comes out, it's some isser and some heter. It's not pure isser. Umikol makom molde harav, which is the Rashba, Zal. Isser. Nafla. Here's this key point of the Rashba. He agrees that, even though he doesn't say Hanan, but he agrees that if an Isser gets into a piece, the Nafla oto aticha l'kedeira sheyesh ba kedei shishim levatla, and it falls into another pot that has 60 against the original drop, only needs 60 against the original drop. Afilu hachi, and therefore really the original drop is now mutter because it came out into the water, and it's batel in 60. Afilu hachi hi atzma asura, but the piece remains asur. Ubizman shemikiro zarka ba'ochel sha'ashar. And if you know which one it is, you have to throw it out and eat the rest. Lefi shehi kvar ne'asra, because it became asur. Now, once it got the category of asur, it's going to stay asur. V'ha'isur hanivla b'tocho eino yotzei. But it doesn't just say it's because of like some kind of structural reason in law, but because of a physical reason. Because ha'isur hanivla b'tocho eino yotzei. Even though we don't say that all the isur comes out, umitarev imarotiv, and spreads into the rotiv, faticha shebekederah, and all the chatichot that are in the kedera. In other words, what he's saying is like this: Ein hagala ba'ochlin. That's what you can write here over your Gemara, over your page. Ein hagala ba'ochlin. In other words, buy a fork that has treif in it. If you drop it in a pot of 60 water, we say that all the treif comes out of the fork into the water. That's why you should have 60 water when you do hagala on a fork, because you want to have 60 against it, unless the fork was 24 hours sitting, in which case it's anyway b'diavad kosher, so you don't have to have 60 in that case. But if it would be actually, you want to use the fork right away, you need 60 water so that the meat, the flavor that comes out of the fork is batel in the water. But we say there that it all comes out and the fork becomes aser, becomes mutter. There's as much remains some of it remains in the fork, but the amount that remains in the fork is equal to the amount that is the same ratio as the rest of the water. There's no higher concentration in the fork, and therefore if there's 60 in the water, it's the same ratio everywhere across the board, and therefore the fork is kosherized. But if you had a piece of meat, even though the meat is only aser because it absorbs something, the Rashba doesn't go so far as to say there's hagala. You could pull out because the concentration could remain higher of the isser could remain higher in the original piece. Yeah, Joel.
I mean, he's essentially in his Efshar Sochto is impossible, equating it to Kli Cheres, right? He's saying that food is like Kli Cheres and that you can never fully get the Isser out.
Right, but I wouldn't use the word Efshar Sochto here. It's a different concept. It's not the same. It sounds like this. It would be nice if it fits to the words, but it's not the same concept.
Well, I mean, we've seen that the Rashba holds that Efshar Sochto mutar is just impossible left sochto, right? That's what he holds.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the point is that right, exactly. It's impossible to actually get it out. So therefore, the piece remains aser. We in a previous, like 3 years ago, we actually learned the Rashba's book, the Bayis Chadash. Okay, Torah Tabai. Thank you. All right, so the chaticha doesn't become aser again. Doesn't become mutter again. So the Rashba holds that there's no Hanan, but the piece is sort of like Hanan because it can't become mutter again. ואינו דומה למחומץ ומדומה שהאיסר בעצמו חוזר ומתערב עם ההתר המרובה. There's a lot of heter, and when you add liquids, it all spreads out, and the original one can become mutter. V'nit rabbe achshav v'yachol itztaref. In other words, if it's a liquid that spreads throughout everything, then the original liquid would become mutter. The liquid that became the liquid that had been aser will now be mutter, but not by a chaticha. Okay, maybe I'll have somebody else read. Somebody wants to read. Maybe Josie, you want to read a little bit? Now we're going to get the Ramban.
Sure. My ruler moved and I lost my place here. So
Utshuvot Ramban. Utshuvot Ramban.
ובתשובות הרמב"ן, סימן בלה בלה, כתוב שלא אמרו התיכה עצמה נעשה נבלה, אלא בבשר וחלב, וכדעת רבינו אפרים, ודרכו ישרה, והלכתו ברורה, מכמה ראויות. So the Ramban's going to paskin like Rabbeinu Ephraim here. The Chanan is only by basar v'chalav, and
we're osin ma'aseh ad kan l'shon. So the Ramban is like Rabbeinu Ephraim. Go on. V'kasav harav hamagid.
It was a ma'aseh ad kan l'shon. V'katav harav hamagid beperek tet shenir lo shekain dat harambam shem haticha atzman aset nevela elo basar v'chalav bilvad sheher lo hizkir kach v'shar yisurin. ובהלכות תרומות, פרק בלה בלה, כתב שאין המדומה מדמה אלא לפי חשבון, ולא חילק בין המדומה לשאר איסורים, מחמת בעלה. וכן עיקר, על כורכך,
עד כאן.
עד כאן.
So now we can add the Rambam and the Rav Hamagid.
And the Ramban as well, right?
And the Ramban. Go on. Rosh.
והראש כתב בסוף פרק ג' הנשה, מחלוקת רבינו תם ורבינו אפרים, ולא הכריע ביניהם. So the Rosh doesn't recognize machloket, but he doesn't rationalize the two of them. The Alpi Kain Katav Rabbeinu shehiskim ladad HaRabbeinu Ephraim. V'nira sheta'amo.
Wait, what does that mean? Who is Rabbeinu?
In this case, Rabbeinu is it sounds like you're talking about, in this case, the Torah, right?
The Torah, yeah, the Torah.
You're talking about the Torah.
If you remember, the Torah said, he said, Adoni Avi HaRosh Zal Hiskim L'dat Rav Ephraim. But he just now told us that the Rosh did not machriya. He did not decide. So he says, V'afal Pikein, nevertheless, even though he didn't decide, the Torah Rosh Hiskim L'dat Rabbeinu Ephraim.
The Torah made a decision because he needed to make a decision.
No, well, he's actually, the next part I want to skip, but the next part he actually brings some reasons why he sort of tries to prove that the Torah does hold like the Rosh. He tries to defend that the Rosh holds like Rabbeinu Ephraim, and he tries to defend the Torah for saying what he said. In other words, even though it seems from the first place that he quoted that he didn't machriya, he has some chuvos and some other sources that seem to say that he does agree with Rabbeinu Ephraim. Here, and if you skip about 4 wide lines, ubetshuvotav. Ubetshuvotav mashma.
Hold on a second. Ubetshuvotav mashma.
Yeah. There's like a parentheses, klal kaf, siman bet.
Okay. Ubetshuvotav mashma vadai shehu sover k'divrei harav Ephraim שכתב 29 זיתים של התר שנפל בו זית של חלב, ובקדרה אחרת היו 30 של התר ונפל לתוכו זית של דם, ונתערבו יחד. אלו שתי תערובות דמותרים לטעם חלב שבו בטל בשישים, וכן טעם דם שבו בטל בשישים. ואם איתה דכל איסורים אמרינן חתיכה עצמה נעשה נבלה, היה צריך 60 כנגד כל ה-30 זיתים.
All the shloshim zaytim. In other words, when you had an original mixture, something falling into 30 and another thing falling into 30, you should now have 31 of Isser in each case. And when they join together, you should have already had Hanan. The fact that he brings this case and says that it's mutter means that he doesn't hold Hanan and Shar Isurim. That's his proof. Of course, it's not the best proof because it's liquids, right? In liquids, everybody agrees. See, ki'ilu. Unless it's chaylev. Sorry, it's chaylev. You're right. It's chaylev. Tam chaylev shabo.
I'm sorry, chaylev and dam.
Chaylev.
Right.
Chaylev. But even chaylev is a liquid kind of. Kedera.
Forbidden.
Anyway,
it's two things that are forbidden.
There's the point. There's two things that are forbidden, and I should have required 60 against the whole 30, and yet we don't say that. So it must be that the Rosh does hold like Rabbeinu Ephraim. Okay. Okay. Let's take a break now. We'll come back. Zoom recording. All right, let's get a move on here. We have a few interesting things to see. I have a list now so far of like 5 people on one side and 4 people on the other. All right, but if you skip down, if you skip a little bit down in the Beis Yosef, where he says Katava Igur, and then I even skip further down, it says Umikol Makom Ein Lahachmir. You see that? Umikol Makom Ein Lahachmir Bishvil Zeh. He's talking about this case of liquids, whether liquids is that a good proof? Remember, I said, is it a good proof for the Rosh that the liquids mixed together in 30? Do we say Hanan there? And he says, "U'makom makom ein la'achmir b'shvil zeh dekule alma hach svara dechaticha atzma na'aseh nevela eino elo midrabanan." Everybody holds that that Hanan is only the Rabbanan, he says. V'nidon didan, and in our case, which is the liquids, bein lamar shari ledator zarua mishum dedavar lachu. In our case, everybody would agree that it's mutter because, in other words, it's only the Rabbanan in Shara Suri, and so thereby by lach and lach we're going to be lenient, like we just said. So that's everybody agrees. But I just want it's interesting to notice that he says that everybody agrees that it's the Rabbanan. I find that very interesting because it's unclear that it's a Rabbanan machloket, in other words. But he says everybody agrees that it's the Rabbanan. And the Rosh would allow it. In other words, the Rosh would allow it because there's no Hanan Bichlal, because he's coming out like Rabbeinu Ephraim. So let's put the Rosh on the side of Rabbeinu Ephraim, like the Tur did. So now I have on Rabbeinu Ephraim, I have Rashba, Rambam, Hamagid, and a Rosh. That's 5. And on the other side, I have Ri, Smag, Smak, Mordechai, Ram. So 5 versus 5. Okay.
I think the Magid is really the Rambam, right? The Magid says that he thinks the Rambam holds that. So.
Yeah, well, I'm taking the Magid. I'm taking the Magid brought along a partner. The Magid claims that the Rambam. You're saying the Rambam is unclear. I think everybody thinks the Rambam is. Oh, you're saying the Magid himself doesn't say that?
Yeah, I'm saying he says the Rambam says it, which I think holds more weight than the Magid saying it.
No, but what does the Bala Magid himself think? He presumably agrees with the Rambam.
Yeah, yes, but I think it's almost less relevant than the fact that the Rambam.
Okay, fine. Okay, you can take away the Magid. So then we have 4 against 5. Okay. V'le'inyan halacha. Oh, that's what we want to know. What's halacha? According to the Beis Yosef. V'le'inyan halacha. Kevan sheharambam v'harosh. Wait a second. Who are the Amudei Hora'ah?
The Rif,
the Rambam, and the Rosh. No. And so he's got 2 of them. Well, the Rif is we didn't mention the Rif, but yeah. So, Kevan sheharambam v'harosh maskimim b'divrei Rabbeinu Ephraim hachi naktinan. This is probably the first time I ever saw him actually go according to his principle, in at least in these halachot. Naktinan, v'kol shekei, and even more so, Shah Rashba, v'Rava Magid. Oh, you see, the Rava Magid maskimim, v'ken b'tshuvos l'Ramban, and the Ramban also. So he quoted all 5 people that we just said. Pesach came. Ve'id, and not only did he paskin like that, ve'id shekain nohagin. He didn't just say that that's his opinion. He says that's our custom. V'osin maase, and we actually are lenient when a case comes up in court. Afal gav deharan. Now I was going to call the other side. Afal gav deharan lo savar la kavte mikol makom hare katav. The Bishar Isurim lo Amrinu Hatikatzman say Nevela El Rabbanan. But the Ramban who disagreed, he said it's only Rabbanan. The Kavan de Plukta the Rabbanan, and since it's an argument about a rabbinic law, Hu Naktin and Lakula, have it, it should be, I don't know, Hu Naktin Nan Lakula Ken Nira Li. and therefore we should be lenient because it's a rabbinic law, and by rabbinic laws you should be lenient. So he says the Ran actually is on his side, sort of, even though he's not. The Ran says it's also Rabbanan, so that's it. But okay, but he just said before that everybody thinks it's Rabbanan. Everybody who's Machmir is saying it's Rabbanan. He claims. What does he say here? Dinim hanoflim bechaticha atzma nase nevela o eno nase. Okay, that's it. I want to look at Dalit. So he just now paskin. So now we got to see what the Ramah says. So that's Dalit in the Darkei Moshe. Maybe Jacob, you want to read?
You wanted to be the Ramah,
The Darkei Moshe, Dalit.
Oh, Darkei Moshe Dalit. Okay. The Ran. So
Ubiharan.
Yeah. Ubiharan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sof Parak Kol Habasar Anu Nogin Isir B'Chol L'Socho Vamrinan B'Chol Chanan.
So now he's saying, wait a second. The Ramban is strict.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. I don't know what this kaf hey, but Ken, like, what is a kaf hey here? I didn't check.
Ken halacha b'tav hachi.
V'ken hechriya maybe, and so
I thought it was
decided.
V'chen haya be Mordechai, right? So that's what I thought it was.
V'ken haya, okay.
Yeah.
V'ken haya. The Mordechai. So now he's basically just going to quote the other side of the pendulum. You know, the other side of the mishkal, of the balance.
Yeah.
So he says, wait a second, but the Ran is machmir, and not only is the Ran machmir, da'anu noagin iser. He's not just saying his opinion; he's saying that's his community, his whole community that's doing that. And then he quotes the Mordechai. So what does the Mordechai say? Well, the Mordechai says the same thing. We can katav b'hagot maimaniot, and hagot maimaniot is like the more the Ashkenazi side. Go ahead.
B'shem smog. De'ein lahaka laso masa k'divrei Rabbeinu Ephraim ki kol hadmonim chokim ad kan lishono.
Oh, that's that same. I remember I said the Beis Yosef was the Darkei Moshe can quote that. He says, "Ki kol hadmonim chokim." On this point, in other words, don't be lenient. But can keep going.
V'chein psak b'isr v'hetra aruch klal kaf dalad d'chein nogin v'chein ktav igor d'chein nogin b'chol isrim v'ayin l'el siman ayin bet.
Okay, so stop there. So there, the lines have been drawn. He quotes all the other side and says that's the halacha. Let's look at the Shulchan Aruch. And Dalit. Let's look at Shulchan Aruch on Dalit. Shulchan Aruch, Tzadi Bet, Dalit. Good to look at the Shulchan Aruch sometimes. You can learn a lot by learning it. To paraphrase Yogi Berra.
Would I continue or?
Yeah, go ahead. In the Shulchan Aruch, Dalit.
Lo amru chaticha atzma nasa it nevela ela b'basar v'chalav. Aval lo b'shar isurim kun kazayit chalav shnivla b'chaticha ve'im b'shishim levat lo. Kazayit chalev.
Kazayit chalev. Right.
Chalev. Shnivla b'chaticha ve'im b'shishim levat lo. V'nasra v'achar kach b'slo imachirot ein sarich ela shishim k'dei kazayit chalev. ואז אפילו חתיכה עצמה חוזרת להיות מותרת.
Right. And then the piece itself becomes
Right.
mutter. If you look
Mhm.
at Yud in the let's see who's better to look at the Shach. Yeah, look at Shach Yud Aleph.
Mhm.
Because he says on the words as even the piece becomes mutter. So look at Shach Yud Aleph.
Okay. Hema. Look common gross סימן ק"ו כתב החתיכה עצמה עומדת באיסור, לפי שהאיסור שבה אינו נפלט ממנו לגמרי, עד כאן לשונאל.
So explain.
So we'll see later in Kufav, as we saw earlier this year, that the Chaticha remains Isser because the Isser that was absorbed into it can never be exuded completely.
But not only that, that's the law, but he says v'katav.
Mm-hmm.
What katav? He himself wrote.
Mm-hmm.
This is a contradiction in the author. The author is contradicting himself. Katav, he wrote himself that this piece is always remains usher. Why does he say it's choseret liot muteret?
Mm-hmm. Should I?
Joel, do you remember an answer that I gave once years ago that not the Shach says?
No, I don't.
No, is the answer I gave once was he's just paraphrasing. He's just quoting the tour. The tour said that, so he's saying it. And the tour, what did the tour mean when he said it? We also should have asked, why does the tour mean? Why does it become mutter? The tour doesn't hold like the Rashba, that the beast. So he's just holding like the tour, or perhaps it's like poetic. Sometimes he just quotes things. Because he's sort of following the tour, but he doesn't really mean to pass. He's saying like in a theoretical sense, like I said by the tour. In a theoretical sense, the piece could become mutter, except that it doesn't. But it could become mutter. But let's see what the Shach says. The Shach gives a better answer than my answer. We didn't read the Rav Haga'ah.
No.
Where is it?
Tagav v'yesh omrim de'amrinan.
Yeah, you can read the Hagah. Read the Hagah.
Yeah. V'yesh omrim de'amrinan b'chol ha'isurim chaticha nasat nevela v'chein minhag pashut v'ein isnot.
What does it mean, minhag pashut?
I mean, I guess it's like the obvious thing people do.
Right. So it's a bit. That's the question.
Yeah.
The word pashut sounds like simple or obvious, but it doesn't mean that here. It means like lifshot the yad means to spread out your hand. So it means the widespread custom.
Yeah.
So the minhag pashut is a good term to know. It means the widespread custom. Ve'en l'shanot. So so we're machmir.
V'dafka im iser davuk b'chatichat hater o shaticha kula chutz l'rotav notav ala isor.
Like Tosfot said.
Right. Aval im mix at hachatichat hocharotav v'ein ha'isur davuk bo lo amrina mechaticha nasa nevela.
We're going to be lenient like Tosfot and say if it's partially submerged, or as long as it's not davukbo. Davukbo means like it's like a piece of meat with a piece of chaylev connected to it. That would be a different case. But if it's like a drop that fell on it, then we can be lenient and say there's no chanan. Even though Rashi, Rashi would say there is chanan there. Rashi would say. Mikol makom.
Yeah. And mikol makom yesh la hachmir lasor otachaticha.
Wait, I lost the place. Wait, I'm sorry. Umitzaref kol wait, where are we? Ein iser davuk bo lo amrina hadicha nase nevela. Umitzaref kol kadeira lebatela iser. Mikol
makom yesh la hachmir lasor otachaticha. Yeah.
We do have to forbid the piece, even if it's submerged, even if it's partially submerged. but we're not going to say Hanan, but we are going to say the Isser is. We're not going to be totally like Tosfot, right? Whatever. We're going to say we're going to be totally lenient like Tosfot, but the piece is going to become Asr. Kol zeh.
וכל זה בשר איסורים, אבל בבשר וחלב, אף על פי שאינה איסור דבוק, ומקצת חתיכת תחרותיו, אמרינן חתיכה נעשית נבלה.
Right, and then we would require 60 against it, even though it's in the rotev. So he's passing like Rashi, not like Tosfot. He's machmir like Rashi, that if it's partial, if it's like that whale that we talked about before, that's its back is exposed, and the drop falls on that back, it's going to be Hanan if it's Basar B'chalav. But if it's Shar Serb, it's not going to be Hanan. Go ahead.
Yesh omrim dilo amrinan chaticha naset nevela im nitorev isor lach beheter lach.
Oh, that's what we talked about before. If they're both wet, then we don't say it maybe. There's Yesh omrim.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Ach nitorev hakol beheter acher ve'in tzrichim rak ishim neged ha'isor shenafal.
Right. Go ahead. V'yesh l'smoke.
V'yesh l'smoch al zeh b'shar isurim l'tzorach hefsed gadol.
So that's what I said before. That whole opinion of the Mordechai that we saw, we're going to keep it in the halacha, but not. We're not going to grab it with two hands. We're going to grab it with one finger, only in a hefsed merubah.
Yeah.
Avalo b'basar v'chalav, obviously.
Right.
You see, these are all kinds of leniencies because it's all the Rabbanan. Okay, go ahead.
Nitrev yavesh b'yavesh lo amrinan b'shum iser chaticha naset nevela.
Right. If it's dry things, or if it's, let's say, little pieces, so then we don't say Hanan.
Yep. V'ayin l'kamen siman tzadi tet medina chaticha naset nevela kli hanasar m'bliat iser lo amrinan bechaticha naset nevela v'lo ba'inan shishim rak neged ha'isur shabala. Right.
Oh, this is interesting.
No chanan by Kalim.
No chanan by Kalim. Kli hanesar m'bliat iser. Which is different from milk and meat. But by Kliat Isser, we don't say that the Kli expands that Isser. Okay, where did he disagree with the? I didn't notice that he disagreed. I remember that he does, but I didn't see it here.
Gasham is what the Shach says. So
there we go. Thank you. Yeah, because he didn't say it here. So over there, we're not going to look over there now because I don't have the book. Well, we could look over there, but yeah, he does over there say that it's not correct what the Ramah said, what the Mechaber says over here about the Chaticha Chozeret Liot Muteret. So it's over there. You're right. Thank you. V'harav b'hagasham hevin shehem devarim sotrim zeh v'zeh. In other words, he says that he points out this stira and says the halacha is like it is here. When I'm saying in Kaf Vav, he says it's like the halacha is here in Kaf Vav, Kuf Vav, and not like it is in Sadi Bet. Okay, so now go back to the Shach. Kedei. V'kedei.
V'kedei shelo yisru ha'dvarim zeh king tav v'perush.
Kol kach b'ferush.
Kol kach b'ferush. Okay.
Not so. They shouldn't. It shouldn't be such a blatant contradiction.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to explain it.
Niro Yoshev. The Maskatav Khan Ratzalomar Lefi Shekatav Mikodem Gabe Vasar V'chalav the Afa Rotav Mutar B'shishim Mikol Makom Hakatika B'Sura Omedet the Imhi Ru'ila Kabed V'ina Makira Ina B'Tela B'Elef V'Kmas Malan the In Khan B'Shar Isurim Ela Debatel Rov because eno makira. Kevan de ein isar machmat atzma.
Okay, so go back.
Right. So since earlier it's written by Basar and Chalav, that even the broth would be permitted with shishim. In any case, the chaticha would stand in its isser if it's
No,
real.
right. The piece.
Right.
If you don't know which is the piece,
right.
the piece will
Right.
stay usser, even though the rotav is mutter. Why? Because it's rui litchabed. The piece is rui
Right.
the piece is ruya litchabed, and therefore, when you don't know where the piece that's rui litchabed is, and it's all mixed with all the other pieces, even though the broth is going to be mutter, you'll have to take out all the pieces because maybe that's the one that's usser, and it's rui litchabed.
But it's written so
even be'elif.
Yes, but that's written specific. Yes, and that's written specifically by Basar v'chalav, so it comes to teach us that it's not the case with other isurim. So other isurim, we say it doesn't stay in its isur, and it would be batal b'ruv.
Even if it's rui l'tchaben, it's a nice big piece.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a nice big piece, but I don't know which one it is. We're not going to say that it's usur. Why? Because it's the eino isur machmat atzmo. Those are the words. The eino isur machmat atzmo. It's not essentially usur. It's only usur because it absorbs something, and that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about shar isurim that absorb a piece that absorbed a drop of isur. Then the piece is going to be batel in a case like this. When he says va'az hachaticha atzma chozeret liot muteret, he means in our case, in a case where there's a chaticha that mixed with other chatichot, and you don't know which one it is. It's not, if you do know which one it is, he didn't mean to say that it's mutter. If you know which one it is, then you throw it away. But if you don't know which one it is, then it would be mutter. That's what he's saying. Which wouldn't be the case by Basar b'chalav. Now, he himself, before you jump on his explanations not being great, he himself says that he doesn't necessarily think this is the greatest answer. It does work, but he just says he just wants to try nearly yashiv. He's trying to solve a blatant contradiction. Ari?
I don't totally understand. So it's not. So it is batel, even though it's roi litkabed in the shari surin case?
Exactly. That's what he's saying. The opposite of what we saw in the Mordechai. If you remember what I pointed out in the Mordechai, what I was very surprised by was the Mordechai was saying that the piece in Hanan is essentially usher, and it's even if and therefore it's really litkabed, it's not batel. And the Shach is saying no, the Mordechai is not correct because we know he's not correct. We know that the halach is not like the Mordechai. That if it's shar isurim, then there's no din of chaticha ruya litkabed, and therefore the piece could, when he says when the Shulchan Aruch says chaticha atzma chozeret liot muteret, what he means is if it's mixed with other chatichot and we don't know which one it is, then we're allowed to eat all the chatichot, which we wouldn't say by Basar b'chalav.
And this is in Rov? Rov chatichot?
In Rov. It has to be Rov. Yes.
Not even shishim.
Not even shishim. So you could have 3 pieces of steak, big pieces of steak, and one of them for sure Isser fell on. You don't know, as long as there's 60 in the whole mixture against the drop, then you could eat the all 3 pieces. If you don't know which one. So when you're dropping Isser into your food, be sure to close your eyes.
All right, that makes sense. Right. So we wouldn't go so far to say that the piece, if we knew what it was, gave its flavor back to the mixture.
It doesn't say. He's not saying what it sounds like. What it sounds like he's saying is that there is hagala in ochli, that the flavor goes out. And what the Shach is saying, no, it doesn't mean that. It just means that you could eat it because it's not an Isser Atzma. Joel?
Yeah, I think the whole thing is very dachuk as an explanation because in Kufav he's clearly talking about Shari Surim. He's not talking about Basar B'chalav.
But there he says it's Asr.
Yeah, he says but that's got to be that's the Basar that's the Asr case is got to be the Basar B'chalav case, right? Here, when he's talking about in Sadi Bet, he's talking. So at this point in Sadi Bet, he's talking about Shari Surim. right? But he's also talking about Shari Surim in Kuvav, right? He's not talking about Basar B'chalav. And he says, Haticha Surah, right? He says, Aval Haticha Atzma Surah, right? So you can't actually make the distinction. He's talking about the same thing in both cases. I think he's making a chiluk that doesn't make sense with the text.
I agree with you. That is, in fact, that is the kasha on the steroids. But I think that is the kasha. That's the best kasha on the steroids. Even more, there's even a better kasha, which is the whole context of Sif Daled is about the essential dinim. But he's not trying. Whatever. It's a teretz. That's why you go back to my explanation, which is that he's just quoting the language of the Tur, and he's giving you a kind of essential din without keeping in mind the Rashba's point. He's trying to. It's like when you lay down first principles, then you start to specify further details afterward. And the first principles is that the piece really would become mutter, because why shouldn't it? We have a suffix if the flavor actually comes out. That's only like a suffix. So because of a suffix, we're going to be machmir, and we're going to say that it maybe didn't all come out, and the piece will remain us. That's what the Rashba says. But that doesn't mean that that's the fundamental principle. Joel?
I think this might be a fundamental issue with using the Shulchan Aruch to paskin, right? Is that the Beit Yosef, he says, this is a review book. It's not like the book you should use. You should go, but it's supposed to remind you of what he's quoting from the Beit Yosef, and so therefore, in this case, he's quoting the Rashba. You should remember to go back and, not the Rashba, is the Rashba? It's the Rashba.
No, here he's quoting the Tur, but what he says in Kuvav, he's quoting the Rashba.
The Rashba. Yes, he said you should remember, like when you see it, you should say, "Oh, that was the Torah's opinion." Then I can go back to the Beit Yosef and see what he gives everybody else as well.
Exactly. You can't. I think that's the very important lesson in this class is that you can't paskin just reading the Shulchan Aruch. I mean, if you read the Shulchan Aruch and you read the Shach and the Taz, then you could paskin because they're gonna correct it. Okay. In the time we have left, let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch on Hay. It's a totally different topic. But the Tur on Hay. But what we did is very important stuff because we learned the different opinions and we learned that there's certain kulas by the liquids and by Haticha Ruya Litchabed, that even though we say Hanan and then the Tur and then we talked, the Ramah brought in the case of submerged and partially submerged. We saw a variety of cases where if we would hold the essential din of Hanan, we would be stricter than the halacha actually is. And as we even though we hold Hanan and Shari Surim, we don't hold it equal weight to Hanan in Basar B'chalav. Okay, so let's maybe Lexi, you're in the mood to read something.
I'm not feeling great at the moment, so I'm mostly not so participatory.
Okay, no problem.
But
so who would like to read that didn't read? Maybe Joel. Joel, you didn't read actually.
I knew you were throwing it to me. All right. Tipat Chalav Shenafla Kedera.
Shammai disappeared. I don't know. He was here. But... Okay. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Tipat is... I love and hate the sieve, so that's good. Tipat Chalav Shenafla Kedera She'etz ala Esh Mibachutz. All right. So you have a drop of milk. You've got a meat pot, and it falls to the outside of the pot, and it's next to the fire. That's
right. When he says next to the fire, it just means it's boiling.
Yeah, the kedera is on the fire. Yeah, the kedera is on the fire.
We would say it's on the fire.
Yeah.
And the drop fell mibachutz.
Outside the wall. No, it's not in the pot, but on the outside of the pot is what it's like splashes.
Perhaps you were like, it actually happened. It could happen very easily. You're boiling a pot of milk soup, and you're frying schnitzels on the other side. And maybe, the oil from the schnitzel or some of the juice from the schnitzel, from the heat of the cooking, flies and hits the side of the pot of milk. We're not talking about a parv pot. We're talking about there's actually milk in it. Okay.
All right. So even if you got 60 against the drop, you can't be, there's no bitul. V'im ken hatipa oseret hakdera kol sevivotea v'nesar tafshil sheba. It's like the incredibly powerful drop, and it's oser with in the kedera, everything around it, and the food inside it. So the pot is now problematic, and the food is problematic.
Right. It's all usser. The pot has to have
Yeah.
hagala, and the food has to be thrown away.
But now we're going to get the 60 squared. V'chatav harav Rabbeinu Meir Rotenberg.
And he's saying, wait a second, before you even get there, he's okay. Katav harav Rabbeinu Meir Rotenberg. Yeah, go ahead.
שאם יש בתבשיל 60 פעמים פעמיים 60, it's 60 squared, it's פעמים, whatever,
no, I think
60 times 60.
60 פעמים 60. 60
yeah,
times 60.
Times 60, yeah. So
3,600.
כנגד הטיפה, מותר, right? Then it's permissible. שהטיפה אינו אוסרת אלא עד, she's given the whole theory of this here. Why? Because the טיפה אינו אוסרת אלא עד 60 כנגדה. Right, so it will asur 60 times its amount of the pot is what it does.
And why not more? And if the drop would travel more than 60, then it would be batel.
Exactly,
because it would travel 70, then it would be batel. We don't know how much it travels. The worst possible case is that it travels like 59, and then it didn't travel enough to be batel, but it traveled enough to usher all that 59. Yeah. Plus itself.
There's a part of the pot now that which it's going to 60 times the size of the drop that is now asur. Right.
And that's Hanan, and that's Hanan, and Hanan is expansive. It expands now the drop, the milk and the meat, because you've got meat and milk mixing. That's why we wouldn't say this by Isser, because no Hanan by Isser. But there is Hanan by milk and meat.
So
go ahead.
Can I get to mutar? Shetipa eno seret el ad shishim kenegda. Ve'im yesh betavshil shishim keneged otam shishim mutar. So if you have 60 in the tavshil against the 60 of the pot that is now 60 times the drop in the pot that is now asur, then you've got 60 against the 60, and therefore 3,600 gets you.
So what is the first opinion? Distinguish this from the first opinion.
The first opinion says that it doesn't. Period. It's essentially almost like b'mashahu. That it's osir.
Right. Do we have a rationale for the first opinion? Well, maybe
I think it. Yeah. Well, I think the idea is that it's osir the entire pot, and then the contents of the pot can't defeat the entire pot. Is the idea here? But
right. We have a rule, by the way. We have a rule which is that the contents of a pot are never considered to be more than 60 times the volume of the metal of the walls. So therefore, if the walls are usir, the food in the pot will also be usher. And why are the walls? What?
We're going to bring that up next week, I think, in Sadi Gimel.
There is one suggestion that maybe if it's really wide, really skinny, that it's possible, but mostly we say no.
Right, exactly. It's possible, but mostly we say like that. But that's what this opinion is holding. This opinion is holding that the contents are never going to be 60 times once the walls are usher, then the content will also be usher.
Yeah, I think it's the theory behind that is that it's osir from the outside, and therefore the forces of the tavshil inside are too late to ever be marshaled against it. Right? It's like because it's osir from the opposite side. It's osir the pot before the drop ever gets to the tavshil. You can imagine here's the pot. It goes into the outside of the pot, and by the time it gets to the tavshil, the entire pot is already asur.
Right. I actually here's my explanation. The way I understand it from the Beis Yosef, the pot from the drop of milk or meat, whatever. Let's say the inside was milk and the outside was meat. So the drop of meat that hit the outside made the pot fleshik. It turned into a din of a basari pot. But the contents are milk. Well, if you take a basari pot out of your drawer and you cook milk and you cook meat in it, it's a osir. And this is fresh. You can't say it's 24 hours. It's fresh. That's the concept of having separate kelim. And here you have a kli. In other words, even if it's not usir deraita, what you're eating here, it's the minhag is to be osir. I think he's just really saying the minhag is that it's all usir. Okay, so the second opinion, so the Rav Meir says, no, let's think about it rationally. It can't be more than 60, and 60 times 60, and therefore, if there's 60 times 60 of the original spreading, it should be mutter. Of course, it'll be hard to measure this and figure this out.
Yeah.
But, okay, go ahead.
ובספר המצוות כתב, שאם נפלה כנגד התבשיל, אין צריך אלא 60 כנגד הטיפה שמפעפעת לפנים, והווה לכאילו נפלה בתבשיל. So he...
Right. So Rabbeinu, so let's just distinguish. Rav Meir Rottenberg doesn't hold like this. He holds it doesn't matter where the drop fell, just like the first opinion didn't matter where it fell, because they're just looking at the pot itself. And here comes this chiddush of the Sefer Mitzvos that if it fell against the tavshil, it goes straight through the wall, like the tavshil kind of. We can imagine like it softens up the metal, and now the metal is loose, and the drop just goes right through into the meat, into the food, into the pot.
I think you can also think that the tavshil at that level is also, invading the pot from the other side. So the two of them meet in the middle, kind of thing.
And they join together, and it's a tag. It's like it's a baton race. They pass the baton and just keeps traveling. Okay.
But if it falls on the empty part, in other words, above, let's say, the tavshil, I think might be a good way to think of that. So it then invades, goes into the walls of the pot up until the level of the sauce of the liquid. It's going to spread so much that you're never going to get 60 against the invasion of that drop anymore. The point is, it's what I was saying. It has to spread. We don't know how much it spreads. And if in the worst case is that it spreads very far, but not far enough. In other words, not enough that there is shishim, but enough that, in other words, if there would be 61, then it would be mutter. Yeah, but here it's oh yes, so the pot.
It's like not enough. The kolkach means not enough. Yeah. It only travels up to the point of 60 keneged tipa. And it doesn't travel further. If it traveled further, we don't know when it travels. But if it would travel further, if we knew that, then it would be mutter. But now we don't know it. So maybe the worst case is it traveled up to 60. Hare nesar otomakom shela kedera. That part of the dry, above the line pot is now aser. Go ahead.
So now you pour out the soup or whatever it is, the contents of the pot through that part of the empty part of the kedera, shenesar, that was already made asur. Hare yesar tafshil. Then the entire contents of the pot will become asur, right? So in other words, because as the pour flows over the Easter part of the pot, it's now osir everything. So, all right. So how do we fix this? Vizet takanato. So what do? You let the pot cool down, and so then when you pour it out, it's a cool pot, and therefore it won't be any infecting that happens as you pour it out. I guess you could also spoon it out potentially, would also work.
Right. Actually, the Beit Yosef brings that the original case is actually that they cut a hole in the bottom of the pot.
And drained it.
And drained it out. But he says that that's not a good solution because you'll jiggle the pot and then it'll go a little bit too high.
Yeah.
But by the way, what is it?
With the spoon. If you spoon it out, it might be the same problem because it will,
because if you push the
raise the
spoon
level.
It may, The best is just not to touch it at all. Just let it cool. But turn off the flame. But by the way, from the cutting of the hole in the bottom, it seems to me that we're definitely talking about clay pots. We're talking in general. They're talking about clay pots.
The idea that the pot can be chanan, I thought we reserved that to cheres, but I wanted to ask.
Oh, exactly, and that fits. That fits to that point. This is talking about a clay pot. Well, it's not clear. It doesn't say anywhere specifically in the whole Beit Yosef that this is talking about a clay pot, but it could be that this is talking about only a clay pot. The case that was originally that brings this whole story is clear that it's a clay pot, but it might be the same din. We did sort of say that there's no chanan in a non-clay pot.
Wood, I think we looked at. Yeah. I remember specifically cheres.
Right, wood, very good. Right, wood. By the way, many rabbis do not know this, but you can do hagala on wood. There's some. I once heard a rabbi explaining to somebody you can't do hakal on wood, but you can.
I think that this would also though only be the case if it's on the fire because or it has to be the pot has to be hot, right? In other words, it's because otherwise tata gavar, right? Would be the rule.
Yeah, and then it'll be on the klipa. You're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, go to vav. Go to vav.
Yeah. Okay. Kvar nahagu ha'olam le'esor kishnofelt al dofen shelo keneged harotav. So we're following the opinion of the Sefer HaMitzvot, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but we're not with the. Well, what about the proviso of the Rav Meir Mirottenberg? Presumably not.
I don't think we follow. Yeah, we're just following the Sefer HaMitzvot. If it's either keneged harotav or not keneged harotav, seem to be the only parameters.
And therefore, wait. V'kvar nahagu ha'olam le'esor.
Yeah.
Kishnofel al dofen shelo keneged harotav. What does that mean? What do you mean le'esor?
That means Lasor, both the pot and the tavshil, I think, to say that the whole thing is Lasor, just like we said earlier.
Right, and not to follow this idea of zetakanato, not to let it cool off. In other words, we're not going to rely on this cooling off because people are going to do it wrong. They're going to forget to let it cool off. It's too technical of a procedure for people to do. We're just going to say it's usher.
Okay, but
nobody's never heard of anybody ever asked me. Nobody's ever asked me a question about this. I don't know if any of you have ever got a question where somebody actually asked this question.
But I did, but it wasn't milk and meat. It was meat onto parv equipment, so it was a little different story. So it's all right. V'davka shenafal be'otot.
Probably cook. You shouldn't cook on the stove milk and meat at the same time. All right, go ahead.
But that's only when you fall on the side. It's not like where the fire is. But it falls on the side where the heat source actually is. Mutar, then it's all mutar sha'esh sorfo umeavsho, because then you've got the forces of the fire like destroying. Here it says dries it out, but literally destroying the drop, and therefore it never has the ability to kind of infect the pot.
By the way, we're talking about an open kedera or a closed kedera?
I don't think it matters because at the end of the day, it's about the walls.
Well, if it's a closed kedera,
then
the gra holds.
Oh, you're right. No, because a closed kedera, a closed kedera is a key story. It makes the whole thing mixes.
The steam. You made a pressure cooker, and the whole thing is against the food. All right, I want to skip. Actually, sorry, you're reading beautifully, but I want to skip to Chet.
That's okay. All right.
Can you read Chet?
Kadavar ani of Yaharosh Sal.
Yeah.
But we were going to skip the Zayin, the Rabbeinu Yechiel and the Shat of the Chak. Okay.
Yes.
All right, fine. Kadavar ani of Yaharosh Sal. Machavat shel chalav. Shenitna bekira tacha kedera shel basar. This is actually hazea ola v'nivla bekdera ve'osarta. This is I think the only thing we get with zea in the Torah, if I remember correctly, right? This is so you have like a pan of milk, and you put it on the stove under a pot of meat, and
essentially you have an oven. You have an oven. Yeah. And in the oven, you put a pan of milk, and
the next rack up,
you put it underneath another pot, which above it is a pot of meat cooking. Now the zaya goes up, the steam goes up, and goes into the kedera and forbids it. So look at Beit Yosef. Tachat hakedera shel basar.
Beit Yosef. Not Yud Aleph. Machavat Katav Rosh Machavat Shel.
It's in Yud Aleph. It's in Yud Aleph. Oh, sorry. Wait, Beit Chada. Wait a second. It's in Chet.
I was thinking the Bach. Sorry, I was thinking the Bach. Yes,
it's in Chet. It's in Chet, but it's not the first.
Yeah.
It's Het basically.
Yeah. All right. Katav
just right. B'tshuva. Just right. B'tshuva.
Yeah, b'tshuva katav ken, vevi rayot ledavar, vechatav shetzarich 60 פעמים 60 להתירה, כדין טיפת חלב שנפל על קדרה מבחוץ. So the Rosh writes
60 against the steam. You need 60 against 60 against the steam. You say,
yeah, which is the Maharami Rotenberg.
Yeah, go ahead.
Vechatav bechitve harav Rabbeinu Yisraelin. Siman Kuv Gimel. The Shiur Harchaka. All right, so how far away do they have to be? Im Yad Solet Bikdera Shel Basar Machmat Azea. Afilu Im Hayazea Ola Mutar. So here it seems to be if you put your hand at the steam, and let's pretend the Kedera itself wasn't really hot. So this is more like a case of, I don't know, like an exhaust from an oven or something like that is coming up. And it's not Yad Soleto, then it's
or the top one. If the top one is cold and the bottom one is far away, then it's mutter. But if the top, even if the bottom one is far away, but the top one is hot, then it will still be usher because it'll heat it up again.
Yeah.
All right. I want to look at tet in the dark motion. Sorry, I only have 4 minutes here. So here, read tet.
Yeah, tet's on this. Yeah.
Tet's on this and read it without translating. Just read it because I want to get to the end. The very end is the part I want. But you kind of have to read.
V'siyem sham. V'teda sharei tolin basar leavesh lamala min akira kishemevashlin alav chalav tadir. Afal pisha zea ola min atavshil shel chalav. Ho'il ve'en hayad soledet babasar machmat oto hazea eno oseret ad kan lashona.
So he's saying like this. I'll just explain.
Okay.
They say that if you let's say drying meat, you have your salamis hanging from the ceiling, and beneath the salamis you have your stove, and you're cooking all kinds of things. So sometimes you're cooking milk, and it's going up to the salamis hanging on the ceiling. So he says, but that's okay because it's cold. Go on.
Kla lamed etc. Had asur b'machbat shetachat haktzera hanimili k'shemachavat megula, right? Aval k'shemachavat mechusa, right? This is only when the pan is open. But if it's covered, afal pi sheyoshev zo al zo mamash, even though they're literally on shnehem rotchim, eino ne'asar dehavi k'shtei kederot shnagot zo etzel zo deshari ad kalachno. So if the bottom one is closed, right, we know that two kalim that touch each other, even if they're really hot, there's no transfer of flavor.
So in other words, if you put aluminum foil on your food over the tops of the two pots, you could have milk and meat in the oven. All right, but we're going to see that that's not going to be the halacha. Go on.
V'zol shon Mordechai perak kol basar shtei kederot she'etzel ha'esh achat shel chalav ve'achat shel basar v'hein rotchot איך נבלע זו, אין נבלע זו מזו, אין נבלע מזו לזו, אף על פי שנוגעים כך פסק מהר"ם עד כאן לא שלו. So
that's a side point. He's just saying, it's sort of his proof. If you have two pots that are touching each other on the stovetop, even if one's milk and one's meat, the walls of the pots are touching, that's okay. And that proves that if you have aluminum foil, it's enough. Go ahead.
וכן כתב בהגות ממוניות, פרק ט' מהלכות מאכלות אסורות, אמנם בהגות שערי דורה בשם מרי, משמע יש להחמיר בחי גבנה. Right? It's the opposite.
He says you should be machmir in this case.
Which case? It's when the two are touching each other, when the two pots are
presumably, but we'll read on. Ayin Sham.
ואין שם, סימן נון א', גבי דגים שנתבשלו, ונמצא בהם דגים טמאים. So there's two cooked fish, and inside the fish are found aser fish. ואין לקמן סימן צדיק ג' כל דיני כיסוי של הכתירה, which we're going to do next week.
So I want to learn from this, that what he's saying, here's what I wanted to say. It's probably talking about the two pots next to each other, but the two pots next to each other are equivalent to two pots in an oven with having aluminum foil on top of each other. So that he says we're knowing to be machmir. Yesh lachmir b'kiyai gavna. So what's the solution? What's the solution that the OU says?
Double wrap everything.
Double wrap.
Yeah, double wrap. Yeah.
So here, this is the only place I ever found that this is a source for the double wrapping idea. Because just saying the yesh lachmir, it's a chumrah. It's not because of any real reasons, but because we have a lachmir. Okay, we're done. Our time is up. We finished the tour. The Shulchan Aruch, is just commentary.
Now go and learn.
Now go and learn. All right, Joel, you'll have a shiur of Chazara this week?
We will. We're gonna have Chazar Shir, and then I'm doing Tzadi Gimel next week, right? I think that's
yes. Bezrat Hashem.
We're actually going to spend time on that. The covers of pots in Darchei Moshe Bet, because I think that's an important piece there.
Yeah,
there are other things we'll do too.
Yeah, that's a good thing that I didn't talk about, but it's good to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, shkayach everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yashkach to you.
Thank you.